You're listening to Cards to the Moon, a podcast about trading cards from both a collector and investor perspective. We hope you'll stick around for the ride as we take a deep dive into the state of the hobby, share some hot takes, hopefully some useful advice, and fun stories along the way. Hey y'all, welcome to Cards to the Moon. This is episode 89. My name is Clark from 5 Card Guys on Instagram, and with me as usual is Hyung of Integrity Sports Cards and John, who is Trade You at Recess. Now, most of this episode is actually an interview I was able to have with a fellow Canadian collector. His name's Nazim Hudda, and he's been in the hobby for quite a while. So yeah, it was a great hour-long chat that I had with him about his hobby journey. And it includes a cool story about how he used to grab rebounds for a young Stephen Curry back in the day.
That's pretty
when
cool.
His dad, when his dad, Del Curry, if you guys remember, of course, played for the Raptors during the Vinsanity era. But we'll get into that in a minute. Off the top for this episode, while you guys are here, I wanted to go over our picks for this season's NHL and NBA champions, as well as our picks for the MVPs for both leagues. I got to try to redeem myself for my horrible Lakers pick last year. But let's start off with hockey. Since the season's already started, who do you guys think is going to win the Stanley Cup, and who's going to win the Hart Trophy? Johnny, you want to go first since you're our hockey guy?
Sure. I think Colorado is the easy pick. I think most of us picked Colorado last year too as a Stanley Cup or finalist favorite. I'm not going to pick Colorado, even though I think they are extremely, extremely strong. I'm just going to have a little fun with it. So we're going to go off the board a bit. I don't even know if this counts as like a dark horse pick, but I'm going to pick the Penguins on one side.
Okay.
I think Sidney Crosby Malkin is back. I'm hoping that if he has a full season or a close to full season, like a 90% healthy season, I think they have a real shot at making some noise. Jake Gensel, their little side player sniper, I think he's kind of coming into his own finally. And I have a feeling, Hextall, knowing his big boys are running out of gas, he might make one final push at the deadline and add one or two big pieces. So I'm not going to count out the Penguins. And then on the other side, I like the Vegas Knights.
Okay. They
got a young goalie playing right now. If he can hold up on a full season, I'm iffy if he can, but if the goalie holds up, the rest of the team is looking real deep and real strong. I think I'm going to half-heartedly double down on Eichel. I know Eichel was a big player of mine. This past season, his attitude issues and just his overall sort of like, his take on the game. I didn't like what I was seeing out of Eichel as a person, but as a player, I think he's going to have a big year. I think Vegas is going to be big. So I'm going to go with Vegas and the Penguins, the Vegas Golden Knights. Yeah.
And who's going to win out of those two if they meet in the finals?
Just because I like Crosby, I'm gonna pick Crosby and the Penguins. Okay. Let's go all the way.
So you're locked in the Penguins. All right.
Yeah.
I was just checking their odds. Funny enough, the Vegas odds have both teams at plus 1900.
All right.
Like the 10th best chance to win the Stanley Cup. So they're tied. Vegas Knights and Penguins. You chose the ones that are exactly same odds.
And Colorado's, I'm guessing,
number one.
Oh, I'm sure Colorado's number one.
Where's our home team, Leafs?
Third, plus 1,000.
Really? So
I don't believe it.
I don't know.
That's some bad odds.
No, I mean, I feel like they're not going to win the cup.
Well, that's what I'm saying is like, you're not going to get paid out for that one.
Right. So Hyung, what do you think?
I'm going to Edmonton.
I'm
going to switch it up. I think they made some off-season moves with a lot of experience with Draisaitl and McDavid too, right? So they're getting more deeper into the playoffs with more experience. So I think one of the knocks that we always said about McDavid is when is he going to win a cup? and I think this year might be the year. So I know I got crapped on last year for saying the Maple Leafs, but they had a solid season last year, but this year I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to go with McDavid as the Hart Trophy winner as well, man.
The odds on for sure.
Yeah, I like it. I don't know. Edmonton is kind of like Toronto in the sense that I don't think they'll ever win a cup anytime soon. So my pick is it's kind of a boring pick. I'm going with Tampa Bay. They still have their solid core team. Yeah. As good much pick. As I dump on Kucherov, he's a pretty good player still. Yeah. So Tampa Bay's the 5th favorite right now in terms of odds, plus 1,200. Edmonton's plus 1,500 right behind Tampa Bay. So they're up there. So those are good choices. And for MVP, I'm going with McDavid as well. I
thought you were going to say Panarin for sure.
Can I choose him as Rookie of the Year again?
He is absolutely killing it right now.
Yeah, he's off to a hot start.
Yeah. Well, same with McDavid as well. So I think he scored like 5 points in 2 games, in the first 2 games.
Yeah, for the Rangers. Yeah. Yep, I love him, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna stick with McDavid because, I've been saying on and off that this might be the last chance to get McDavid at a good, affordable, quote unquote price, just because of the bear market, and if he performs well this season, I just think it's just gonna shoot up and you're gonna lose your chance. And I was hoping secretly he'll be off to a slow start, then he gets a hat trick in his first game. I'm like, okay, I have no chance of getting McDavid a rookie card at this point. So
not in season.
And with my luck, he's gonna go win the Hart Trophy this year as well. So all right, we got our hockey picks locked in. How about basketball? Hyung, you want to start your picks there?
I'm gonna go. I'm in between.
You're right. You were right last year.
With Golden State. I don't know. I said Golden State Miami final, but I'm going to go Golden State Milwaukee this time. So I think Golden State looked really good in preseason. They look like they didn't miss a beat. I expect them. They have their core back. But I think it's Giannis's year again. He's going to step up and he's going to win MVP. So that's my prediction. And I'm going to go Milwaukee, actually. But I'm going to say they're going to beat Golden State this year.
Okay. That's a good pick.
And it's because John's boy, Chris Middleton.
Yeah, they needed Chris Middleton, man. They needed him. I'm not even joking.
I think I picked these 2 teams last year. I'm going to go one more time. It's going to be Denver and Miami. I feel like I picked those guys. They're still, the same core. Denver, they were riddled with injuries, but everybody's back this year. I really think they can do it, man. As tough as Golden State looks, especially if Draymond is around for one last year. Golden State's looking tough, but yeah, we're gonna have a little bit of fun with it, just like with my hockey picks. So I like Denver. Denver's strong, and Miami. There's something about that team. I think they're deep enough. They have enough of a bench. They have enough scoring. They have some killer players that know how to win in the clutch. I think it could be Miami too.
All right, good picks. I'm going to go with Denver Nuggets as well. Funny enough, I just think they got all their guys back. Our Canadian boy Jamal's back, so that should be a great addition to the team. And with Golden State, I like them, but there's that one year when the older teams, they just kind of fall off, right? Preseason, things are early. They're in good shape. But, let's see what they do after the All-Star break, how healthy they are, and that's always the thing. It's like you never know when the drop-off is going to be. And it's not going to be like they're not going to go from first to last. But, yeah, I think it'll be more challenging with them. Same thing with the Brooklyn Nets. Their core guys are a bit older. And then you have the Kyrie wild card. So I'm not even going there in terms of what could happen with that team in terms of cohesiveness. But I like Denver. Surprisingly, when I look at their odds, they're 6th or 7th or 8th even. I doubt they're going to be at the top. Yeah, Golden State, Boston, Milwaukee are the top 3 in most odd makers websites. And Yeah, Hyung and I are on the same page for both MVPs. I'm going Giannis. I think he's going to have a good year. And I'm just playing my odds too. Like, I love Jokic as well, but if you play the odds, like, there's only three people that won back to back to back. Like, it's a hard thing to do, obviously, but yeah, I think Giannis got it this year.
Oh, yeah, I didn't pick MVP. I'm going to say.
Right.
I think Dallas. I don't think Dallas is going to win, but I think Dallas is going to have a good season, and this is going to be Luka's first MVP.
I like it.
I hope so.
I was going to say it, but I didn't say it.
He didn't. No, Kyung didn't want to be on wax.
No, I didn't. Yeah, I didn't want to be that guy. You know.
Yeah, that's funny. Okay, let's see. Let's see how we did with our picks at the end of the season. And speaking of picks, there won't be a pick one segment at the end of this episode because, like I mentioned, Nazim and I had an hour-plus talk about the hobby, discussing everything from buying and selling strategies to who might be a good bargain picks this NBA season, because he's really into basketball as well. So hope you guys enjoy the interview. So we have another special guest on Cards to the Moon. His name is Nazim Hudda, and you can find him on Instagram at Hudda123_cards. We'll give you the link to his social media profile in our show notes below. I know he's been a guest on other sports card podcasts as well, sharing his wealth of knowledge, because I know he's been in the game for a while. So you might have already heard him before chatting about his personal experience collecting sports cards. I also know Nazim is big into basketball cards. You know, he's pretty active on a Facebook group called NBA Hotspot Worldwide, which has, I think, more than 33,000 members right now. And so, yeah, what better time to get Nazim on the show to talk about guys in the NBA that he's looking forward to watching and collecting this season. So without further ado, Nazim, welcome to the podcast.
I appreciate the intro. I appreciate the kind words, man. Good to be here.
Well, glad to have you on. Yeah, we always like to start the interview with any of our guests by getting to know them a bit better. So can you share about how you got into the hobby? You know, what brought you in, how long you've been collecting cardboard, you know, just like the rest of us.
Yeah, man. My story started like when I was a little kid. Like, I remember probably like 8 years old, the time of like, I want to say Shaq was at LSU.
Okay.
And like coming into the NBA, and I remember there'd be like infomercials on TV of like, buy this Shaquille O'Neal. I think I want to say it was like a classic set or something like that. And like, I thought to myself, cool. The idea of sports cards was cool. I remember like you could go to corner stores and like there would be a card dispenser of base cards. Right. I remember like buying like Score baseball cards as a kid, and the Blue Jays were cool around the Toronto area back in like 1992.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was just really about being into sports, and it was like a fun time to kind of be a sports fan with the Blue Jays playing, the introduction of the Raptors. I mean, I've been a basketball fan as long as I can remember. I was a Golden State Warriors fan growing up with Run TMC before the days of the Raptors.
Right.
But yeah, just being a basketball fan and like being into cards, the idea of cards, but like it was never, for me personally, it was like before the times of the internet. And the only way to kind of geek out on information and stats was like looking at the back of a basketball card or a baseball card or whatever else it may be. So I think like that side of things kind of intrigued me from a very young age, and just like gathering information, because like there was no real source of information to kind of educate yourself on like what the NBA was and what the history of basketball, or like how many players average 20 points a game. Like I remember like Hoops had like a stats leader card. I want to say 1997, and like so like that was cool to me, and I wanted to buy Hoops packs just to like get that like piece of information, like who are the best players in these categories. So I think that's kind of what it was for me. And then growing up later in life playing basketball, I started doing fan engagement with the Raptors around the time of Vince Carter. And so that got me access around the stadium. And I remember a young Stephen Curry shooting around in an empty stadium. I remember just like rebounding for him and just like
No way.
passing the ball as a kid. And like in high, and I started to collect Stephen Curry cards when he came in the NBA just for that reason. Back when he had ankle issues and nobody wanted to touch his cards. I remember buying an NTRPA of his for $1,000 or like $800 American. And like people thinking that I overpaid for it, and just
That's hilarious.
Just an interesting hobby that it is over time.
Yeah. That's amazing. Wow, I didn't know that you were in that deep way back when. But did you ever leave the hobby, or have you been like, for me and for a lot of us, we kind of grew out of it a little bit, and then we all came back in the last 5, 6, 7 years, especially with the pandemic that accelerated everything. Were you always in the hobby, or was it just like the rest of us?
Well, it's funny because like I graduated high school and I moved away for university, and starving student, I didn't really have time for cards. Although like I would sneak into my local card store here and there and like grab a pack of, I remember buying a pack of 2003 hoops, and I pulled a Dwayne Wade like RPA logo man, but like it was like the tag logo man. It was like one of the coolest cards I ever hit.
Wow.
And like I got that from a local store here that I still do. Like that was 20 years ago, and I still go in there today doing business with them. But like I think my activity kind of had a pretty big lull when I was in school, and once I finished school, trying to hunt a job and working odd end jobs and stuff like that. But like as soon as I kind of set up my my career and kind of got on my feet, then I kind of started getting like into the hobby again. I want to say it was around 2012. I think 2012 was a really cool time for a lot of people in the like specifically basketball hobby.
Yeah, Prism.
Prism, but really what it was the double cohort year. So because of the NBA lockout, you had kind of like a double draft class. And so you had a good slew of players coming in and like a lot of influx of talent specifically from a collecting perspective.
Sure, yeah.
So like that 2012, 2013 class, like had everyone from the 2011 class and everyone in the 2012 class. You had the introduction of like new sets like Flawless and Immaculate coming out. I remember going to my local card store and buying like a Flawless briefcase in 2012, and it was like one of the best returns on a box that I'd ever seen. And I think like at release boxes were like, I want to say about $800 a box, maybe. Okay. And then like when people start seeing the return on those boxes, the returns were like minimum 5,000, and then the resale value just kind of like shot up. So I think it had a lot of things playing. Like there was a lot of product being released that year, so there's always something new and something exciting, and especially when you have new products like the Immaculate that was like ahead of the game, or like all new, like breaking the mold in terms of like game used jerseys. Flawless, the same thing. The logo man started coming out, and I just think that it just generated a lot of excitement in the hobby.
That's crazy. Oh man. Did you have the I guess the insight back then that this was going to be big, or were you just collecting for fun? Like obviously everything's hindsight for a lot of us, but
I was always just collecting for fun.
Yeah.
And I think that like we were all really conservative. Like, I mean, I know I was always really conservative with the amount of money that I was willing to, because in essence it's gambling, right? Like you buy a box at your local card store and like you hope that you get a bit of a return on it, and maybe you keep something and maybe you resell something. But that's kind of where I ended up going. And again, it was around 2012. I was buying more products, and I had a really good in with my local card store because I've been doing business with him for long enough that, if he would get a case of something, he had no problem putting my name on it. And, I could rip a case at a very competitive price, and it was always fun. And that's kind of how I got into this routine of like ripping it, posting 100 auctions, and, maybe there's a few things that I want to keep. And it just kind of like, funded my next purchase. So it's like I was always into the hobby, but it was like activity to help sustain my hobby. Sure. It was never really like investments or like return on investments or anything else like that. I was hoping that I could break some product, buy some singles, resell some product and maybe some singles, and hopefully I had enough money to like buy the next product and the next product, or if I see a nice card on eBay, I'm able to go ahead and I'm able to acquire it. So that's kind of how the way I've always done it. Rather than like, I think a lot of people have been fixated on it as a way to make money. It was just always a way to like pass the time and make games interesting, I guess.
Yeah. Oh, well, true definition of a hobby then.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice. Cool. That's amazing. You mentioned to me before I forget, that you like to talk about the history of the hobby, in particular from a Canadian perspective. You know, we both live in Canada, and I personally love to hear more about that, but I know many of our listeners are actually from the States. So I was wondering if you can also maybe share, you know, if you know how it's different being a collector in Canada versus the US.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that when you're dealing internationally, you kind of have barriers to the market. I mean, whether or not those barriers are physical barriers, if it's, you know, an ocean, or if it is like border rules or laws or import taxes or whatever it may be. I just think that there's just more barriers being put in front of you. Even right now, as a Canadian, if you want to go buy something on eBay, you're going through the global shipping program. You're paying $50 for shipping. You're paying fees. You're paying taxes. So it makes it hard to participate in the hobby, is what I found.
Yeah.
So what I tried to do was I tried to find a way to kind of operate and provide a service to Canadian collectors. So I remember when there were no Canadian groups for basketball, and I think during the pandemic, a few popped up, and I try to be very, very active, not only in NBA Hotspot, which I'm part of the admin team for, but also in the Canadian group, so I can try to help build the hobby within Canada. And I pride myself on having a lot of experience and being able to answer questions, provide information, provide advice, guidance, kind of assistance in any way, shape, or form that I can to kind of help build the hobby. Because I think that when, you know, the hobby's healthy and it's healthy in a lot of markets, I think that just benefits everyone. Like a rising tide kind of raises all boats. So like, I like the idea of like having a very active market within Canada, doing local shows and trying to be able to network here within Canada and just provide, you know, good product to, you know, Canadian buyers. So I've been doing the Toronto Sports Card Expo for the like whenever I've been in the area and able to travel. Like I did my first one in the 90s. I'm gonna be set up at the one in November as well. So it's just trying to bring whatever I have in terms of inventory there, and like providing basketball. Just as recently as I would say, I don't know, 4 years ago, I was probably one of the few people still at the expo who had basketball, and kind of servicing that need and, you know, providing options to, you know, Canadian customers. And so that's what I've kind of tried to continue to do, and just trying to stay active and like rotate my inventory. And like, I had the luxury of being very close to the border as well. So I'm able to kind of buy and sell between USA and in Canada. It's a pretty simple, straightforward process that we can, and anyone who's had any questions about it can feel free to contact me in terms of shipping options internationally, border rules of crossing the border, and how to do declarations, and kind of follow the rules appropriately. But I kind of try to figure that all out myself of like, you know, if I need to be sustainable, you know, if you want to call it kind of like, a business venture, but like if I want this to be, if I want my hobby to be sustainable, I have to be able to sell to international markets. So it involves me traveling and having auctions and selling on eBay and having a connection and things like that. So like kind of doing the ins and outs to kind of keep this hobby sustainable for me and make sure that's not, because like a hobby can become a money pit if you're not organized, if you're not strategic, if you don't control, you know, what's coming out with what's coming in. I think you kind of, even though I don't treat it like a business, I don't take money out into my personal accounts, but like I try to keep it all like online so I can be able to acquire and sell. And when I see something I like, I'm able to buy. But I think it's important that people who want to participate in the hobby are kind of organized and strategic about it, so that it just doesn't become a money pit and, you know, become a stress. Because I know a lot of people just like to break, and then they break, they've spent thousands of dollars, and they just see a pile and they don't really know what to do with it. And I think that's always super dangerous, because people, I think their nature is impulsive, and cards can make you kind of live out that impulsion. Is that word, impulsive? That impulsive behavior.
I get it though. Yeah, yeah.
So pretty quick. So yeah, like that's just something I try to do, and like I said, share information for people who are getting in the hobby when the pandemic hit, and just trying to help them navigate.
No, yeah, that's super helpful, and yeah, you're absolutely right. Like the last few shows I've been going for maybe like in person the last 4 or 5 years, other than the pandemic years, and it's still, I don't know, I don't know if you agree with this statement, but here in Toronto at least, it's still primarily hockey cards, right? And I don't know if you've heard my two co-hosts who couldn't be here today. You know, we always in a previous episode talked about like how there's just a lot of hockey, and we love hockey. We're Canadian, but we also love baseball and basketball, especially in the hobby. And I think, you know, it doesn't surprise me that you're saying you were one of the few that was selling and buying basketball cards. I feel like you're still one of the few that does that, but it's growing. It's growing.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people are kind of down and out about the hobby right now because it was a hard rise and a hard fall over the last little bit. But if you think about it in terms of like 5 years ago, I still feel like the hobby's better off. It may not be 2020, it may not be 2021. But if you look back at, you know, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, even 2017, had a hot rookie year with Mitchell and Tatum. And even for the Raptors, I think OG had a really good year, and he kind of showed out in the playoffs against LeBron in that Cavs series. He was kind of one of the better players as a rookie. And I think it just kind of generated a lot of attention. And then Luka and Trey came in, and it kind of was a gradual build, but like, there were a lot of really, really good times, but I think right now people like to look at like if they got in the hobby 2 years ago, they got in the hobby last year, they're probably not liking where that took them.
Right.
But like I still think that like right now, if you're participating in the hobby right now, I still think it's like still pretty promising because there are people interested, and even if it isn't a lot of casual fans like it was before, I still think there's a lot of diehards, and I think when you have that base pool of supporters of the hobby, and that's kind of always growing, I think that the hobby is always in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely agree with that. You know, similar to the question about, you know, the difference between Canada and the US, you mentioned off air that you're actually heading to a big card show in the States, right, this coming week. Can you share where you're heading exactly? And I'm curious, how do you find the card shows, generally speaking, in the States versus the ones here in Canada, like the Sports Card Expo?
So the one thing that's kind of cool is that the Sports Card Expo have a lot of veterans that have been doing this a long time. Sure. I know I've seen tables there from when I went in the 90s to people who are still there today. I think that the Sports Cards Expo is good because it has a lot of people who are active, a lot of people who are spending money in the hobby. And I think it's a good place to network and to meet people. And even if you don't have a big budget, it never hurts to just go in and introduce yourself, or even go in and make a trade, or just kind of go take it all in. And I think the same thing goes with the shows in the States. I think there's like large scale and then smaller scale. So I'm going to the Chantilly show in Virginia next week. I'd say it's one of the larger shows. The reason I'm going is because I just had a landmark birthday. It was my 40th birthday. And I thought to myself that like I needed something, like we have lockdowns because of the pandemic, and I just need something to get out and get away and find a reason to kind of enjoy myself. So I mentioned I've been doing this for quite some time, and you know, some of these people that I've been doing business with, you know, for 5, 10, 15 years. And it's all kind of online. You never really get to meet these people in person. So I think like to be able to kind of go do these shows and see these people and meet for real and you know, exchange pleasantries, I think is kind of important. I'm feeling super nostalgic about, like, I'm setting up at the Chantilly show with my buddy Zach, who I did like my first deal with on like sports cards forums probably 20 years ago, like or Beckett forums 20 years ago. And these are people who like I've been, you know, enjoying this hobby with for years and years, but I've never actually sat down and had a coffee with them or anything else like that. So like I'm taking the opportunity to kind of enjoy myself, similar to the way that I've enjoyed shows in Toronto and the Expo and the other ones that I've been able to kind of attend and just kind of see people. And there's people that you've been doing business with, and for years and years, and just like kind of seeing people in person, just saying hi and nice to meet you. And
yeah, absolutely.
I've appreciated your business over the last few years. I think it means a lot. It means a lot to me. I care about stuff like that.
Yeah, no, for sure. And even like for us, even just collecting or being back in the hobby the last 5-6 years, we've gotten to know a lot of fellow collectors, and even starting with this podcast like almost a year and a half ago, it's amazing just collecting, even like this, even on a virtual meeting, just like it's putting a face to our social media profiles. So yeah, this is kind of cool just to kind of even talk about the hobby. It's kind of crazy that we've been doing this for this long, but it kind of shows you like how passionate collectors are in general. But,
and I think it's like, even with the pandemic, we kind of became homebodies, and we kind of embraced like the online relationships that that we built with people. I was joking with like a card friend of mine, like we probably chat every day, and he was joking that he talks to me more than he talks to his wife. I don't know if he said that or his wife did, but like that, but that's really where it's come to now. Like, there's people who I used to work with, or there's people that I played ball with, or whatever it may be, that become people that you call close friends. And it's amazing how, like, over the past couple of years, I would say my closest friends have been people who I enjoy this hobby with, for sure.
Well, I'm going to have to follow up with you with after you come back from the Chantilly show to see how you did. Just speaking of that, like, I'm wondering, because you deal with international buyers and sellers, like what percentage would you say are like from, international, from the States, versus the business that you do here in Canada?
That's a very interesting question, and it's something I'm always really curious about myself, because like what I used to find is that, like, the percentage, so for example, I just closed a bunch of sales on eBay.
Yeah.
And so when I used to do these large auctions, I would always try to do a breakdown. And what it used to be about 80% USA. I say about 5% Europe, oddly enough.
Okay, interesting.
I wouldn't have never really seen that, like, expected that, but basketball is big in France. Sure. I guess Eastern Europe, other than like Germany, Italy, and then again throughout Eastern Europe, like basketball is huge, and I always underestimated how much people love basketball and how much people support the hobby. And you'll notice that even in my Facebook group, NBA Hotspot, there's a huge percentage of the community based in Europe.
Okay. Interesting.
I'll say a lot of people who have been doing this a long time, like 10, 20, 30 years. There's just like a lot of hardcore fans out there. The other breakdown that I was surprised to see is Australia. I'll say Australia has always, and when I talked about the barriers in the market and challenges that we face as Canadians, that's something that Australia faces just the same.
For sure, yeah.
Super expensive shipping costs, import taxes, but still diehard fans, and kind of are prepared to kind of pay those overhead, overhead costs,
right? And
just to participate in the hobby. And I was always shocked that like about 5% went to Australia. I would say like that leaves about 10%. I'd say 8% of that would go to, I would say, China and Hong Kong.
Okay.
In Asian countries, I've shipped to Singapore, I've shipped to Thailand, I've shipped to all kinds of places I never really would have expected. But I would say the largest, like that was, when I say 8%, the last 2% would be Canada. And I was always shocked by that. We didn't really have a lot of interest generated within Canada. But with that said, like, that's something I saw change drastically over the last couple of years, and it's kind of been going up and down. But yeah, I think there's a lot of interest in the hobby over the last couple of years, and I think a lot of that interest has dwindled. So it's a lot of what it used to be, I would say. But I have noticed that when I run auctions, there are a handful of, I'd say maybe a dozen Canadian buyers who I know, like, follow me on eBay and will always bid religiously on my auctions because like they like the idea of it. So you also have to keep in mind we're not a large population either, if you think about it in terms of like other countries. So I just don't think you're ever really going to get that volume out of Canada. And I think that like the behavior isn't really oriented towards eBay because of all those barriers that I mentioned before. So, maybe you might post something on eBay, like a Pascal Siakam card. It might not sell very well on eBay, but you take that to a local show and maybe that would sell for a lot better. I think like a lot of people are just kind of turned off by eBay because of all those charges I mentioned before. But I've always found it interesting how it really is kind of like a global game and global hobby, and being able to kind of tap into that, I think is super important. I think if you're going to operate from a Canadian perspective, like having cheap shipping and being able to service the international market, because I think a lot of Americans are scared to service that market. They just view it like, even a lot. I'd say most Americans I've dealt with won't even ship to Canada, let alone to Europe, Australia, to Asia. So in Canada, we have a great service called Chit Chats. They have a lot of locations all over Ontario, and that's a great shipping option. Like I only charge $4 shipping to a lot of my clients in the States, and until I discovered Chit Chats, I had to drive across the border, pay loads of gas, and deal with hassles at the border. But like as soon as I discovered Chit Chats, that became like a game changer for me to like not shy away about selling in the States, selling internationally, because they do offer some affordable shipping rates.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I started using Chit Chats when they had like 2 locations, and now they've expanded like a lot, right?
Well, now they're even here. Like I'm east of Ottawa, and they even have locations here. So
crazy.
I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah. And I think that breakdown is pretty similar. I don't do as much volume as you do, not even close. But if I broke mine down, I would say like 95% is to the States. And then the other 5 is made up of the rest of the world. And then, like a very few are from Canada. But I think it's to your point, I think a lot of the Canadian buyers that's why I like going to local card shows. There's still deals that you can make in person. And it's in some ways it's a lot more fun to do it that way too. So
for sure,
it's a good perspective. I want to ask you: would you say you're primarily, and you kind of answered this a little bit, but would you say you're primarily a sports card collector or an investor right now? Or 50-50?
I would have always called myself a sports card collector. Yeah. And then when the pandemic hit, as a lot of collectors kind of realized, we kind of all realized that everyone has their price.
Right.
And like things that I would think that I would never sell or that I would have ever sold, I actually ended up selling. It's funny because we talked about like my Stephen Curry collection. I had one of the largest Stephen Curry collections, and it was probably my most prized possession. But then when I decided to get married, I sold off. I'm not exaggerating when I say well over a $5 million Stephen Curry collection for like pennies on the dollar, like to buy an engagement ring, to pay for a wedding, to start a life and stuff like that. All very good investments, but like
oh man.
But I found that I rotate my inventory to be able to afford the next thing, whether that I like or that I want to invest in.
Yeah.
And as many, like I used to have like a lot of cards that are worth a lot more than, today than what they were before. But, like for every, what if moment, like there's probably 50 that, it was probably better that I sold those at that moment and stuff like that. And it'll never even out because the Kawhi stuff and the Curry stuff and the Giannis stuff that I used to have are all in the, 4 figures, 5 figures, 6 figure cards today. But, that's all okay because in the moment, like I said, this is all a gamble. So in the moment, if someone's willing to offer you, twice what you paid, 3 times what you paid, 4 times, 5 times, whatever it may be, at some point, it just makes logical sense for you to say, you know what, this, if you want to call it an investment, was good to me. I can buy something, or I can, chase something that's going to be like personal to me. And then maybe that will become the asset that I end up selling to buy something or chase something that's more personal to me. So I still think I'm a collector at heart, but I've come to realize that by being business minded, I think you can afford more for your personal collection. So I guess 50-50 is the short way to answer that long-winded question. But
I like that perspective. And the reason why I asked, like, we had Cajun Cardboard, Brian Dennison on our pod a couple weeks ago, and I asked a similar question, or the exact same question. And I like what he says too, and it's kind of what you're mentioning right now, that no one's these days no one's just a pure collector or pure investor. It's always it seems like we're turned into a hybrid bunch, because there is a price to almost everything.
Yeah, and in the hobby. Like, I think even for me, like I really appreciate my vintage collection, and there's stuff that I didn't necessarily want to sell and that I've sold recently because like I've really appreciated adding to my vintage collection. Maybe I don't have that sexy prospect anymore, but if I can buy, because like there are parts of my vintage collection I sold during the pandemic, and I still like collecting it. So if I can reacquire some stuff and make some money on something else I choose to sell, I think that's cool. I think it's just kind of how you keep the hobby interesting. And it's funny because like some people I heard someone say this once, and I think it's so appropriate. He said he's not a flipper, he's a reverse flipper. He doesn't sell it for double. He sells it for half after he's bored with it. And I think that's something that we all do too sometimes. It's that we just buy it because it sounds nice and we want it. Maybe are not very smart about it. Maybe just a little too emotional about it. And that's okay. I think it's all kind of part of the fun. There's some things that I just want. And I don't mind buying them, and I might enjoy them for a little while. And then I might, I might just move on from them. And, that's okay.
That. I like that. You mentioned I love that story about how you got into collecting Steph Curry when he was just a little boy, like just knowing him as a little boy. Do you have any Steph Curry that you collected back then still in your possession?
No. Or you sold them all, eh?
I pretty much sold them all. Like I had, and I think when I sold them was like, I think he had just won his first MVP, and there was just like a lot of demand for it, and the return on investment was great. Like I remember I acquired an NT Logo Man RPA, and like the original RPA. So like the Logo Man was like an insert. So it's not like the true RPA, but it's still an NT Logo Man.
Sure, yeah.
RPA of Steph Curry.
Steph Curry, yeah, exactly.
It's still one of the wildest cards in history. But I didn't pay that much for it. I think I traded a Paul George NT RPA for it. And the Paul George NT RPA didn't even cost me that much either. So it's like it really costed me nothing, and I could pay for my wedding with this one card. So why not do it? And I think I sold it like I don't like it was not to cover the wedding, but like I think the last I think of like a friend of mine, there was many versions of it. I think my friend of mine bought one, I think, and it was in the six figures. And I'm just like, when I hear stuff like that, that's just crazy. And even like I remember my NTRPA, I sold it after the MVP. I think I sold it for like $5,000-$10,000. They're in the six figures now today too. So like and I'm okay with that. I mean,
for sure.
Can't really live in regrets. Like, I think I think it was exactly what I needed in that moment. And still when I sell stuff today, I think it's exactly what I needed in that moment to kind of afford that next thing. Because as I mentioned, I don't like using my personal money for cards because I think it can be a little bit of a gamble. So like if it means, if I need to sacrifice one thing to kind of move into something else, I think, like I said, I think it's how you stay active in the hobby.
I like that. So we mentioned off the top, you were a big basketball card collector. So with the new season upon us, are there any players, and this is one of the reasons why I really wanted to get you on, are there any players you think you can make a big leap this season and perhaps, see a corresponding spike in card value? Like anyone that you're particularly high on?
Well, I think that's like a really, really popular perspective. And I think that's like a popular take, and everyone loves prospecting and everyone loves speculating, and I think it's just like a passive way for people to kind of gamble on something, just like people like to gamble on who the MVP is going to be or who's the most improved player is going to be. Like Vegas takes action on that. It's a very active line. I think people like to play that same game, but like I just tend to be, I think, a little bit more conservative. I don't like to put all my eggs in one basket. I think I just like to kind of sit back and watch and like just find the good value buys. And I think that's kind of how I get by. On the other hand, like, because like for me, like if I'm going to bargain hunt, like I'm going to bargain hunt. And usually when I see people, like people are really hot on Anthony Edwards right now, or people are hot on John Morant, or people are hot on, I don't know who anyone else would be. But like for me, the way that I see it is that when you have the new prospect come in, I always feel like someone's going to take their thunder, or like if they like, there's so many ways that people cannot meet their expectations. Everyone has like lofty expectations. And I just think that we tend to fixate on the underdeveloped, and there's so many ways the underdeveloped will never kind of meet their full potential. Like the G League is full of potential that never got realized. But I think a really good example of this is someone like Giannis. And if you follow the history of Giannis and Giannis's prices, Giannis was never a playoff player, and people loved his potential, and he would sell based on potential, but then the playoffs would come and he would either not make the playoffs, or they would meet up with the Raptors and he would fizzle out, and people would just liquidate the stuff. And I think that that's kind of what always happens with the John Morants and the Anthony Edwards, or the day, the year before that, it was a Karl Anthony Towns. He was who was super big and one of the top selling guys, but kind of fizzled out. And he was the modern big man, and Anthony Davis was the modern big man, and they're going to dominate the league and they do this stuff, and they never even got a sniff of the playoffs, and they never really materialized. And I think that like Minnesota gave up a lot of their depth. I think the teams that are trying to gel together never really can turn it on in the playoffs, because when the rubber hits the road, they just aren't tested like that. And I think the teams that kind of take time to build over time are the ones that really pay off. So instead of just waiting for that team to kind of break through, I would rather look at the team that's been at it for a little while and then could potentially break through, or look at like the bottom dwellers and just say, who's that team that could, make some noise in the play-in game or something like that, or can kind of come through and close the season strong. A lot of people want to know like who's going to be the MVP, and that's why I should have invested. Like I made a lot of money investing into DeJounte Murray stuff a year ago, and he's on the Spurs team, and he might make a play-in game or something like that. But what happened? He closed the year strong, and he played meaningful games at the end of the year to get them into the playoff game, and averaged a triple-double, and kind of did all those things that make people notice. I think those are the type of things that you have to kind of try to hunt, in that like don't look at the guy who's trying to fight for MVP or most improved player. The guys trying to fight for MVP is fighting with a lot of MVP candidates. The guys who are trying to fight for most improved player are usually first year, second year guys who are trying to make a name for themselves. But like look in the middle of the tier is what I would do. Like look in the people like we're like 4 years in, kind of like I did with DeJounte. I'm not thinking of anyone really right now off the top of my head, but like look at the play, like look at a team like Philadelphia. A team like Philadelphia who's been out of it for so long, but still on the cusp, and their core has been at it like a really long time. I'd rather spend some money on Harden stuff because he's been forgotten. I'd rather spend some money on some Embiid stuff. I think Maxey is a really intriguing player who, even though I say shy away from prospects, I think he's probably the one with the most star potential.
Okay, I like that.
I think the East is a dogfight, and I think the West is wide open. So I would probably look at players that are on the lower end of the spectrum in the West that can kind of make some noise out of nowhere. Like I think a lot of people look at like the Pelicans and see Zion. I think a lot of people would tune into Zion and see him play, and then just by fluke see Brendan Ingram score 40 points. And like make it look like super easy, and like be the best player on that team, and then that could galvanize some people to generate some interest. So I'm always looking at that other guy. I think another time that worked out really well for me is when Tatum came to the league and he was being a superstar, but then he became less efficient. Jaylen Brown was not on anyone's radar really, and then he kind of stepped up and to really be on par with him, and wanted to be one of those alpha players himself, and he got a lot of interest in the hobby, and that was something that worked out really well for me. So like I always try to look at the other guys
interesting
for teams that are kind of are kind of like on people's radar and that people might notice like haphazardly. And then that's kind of always done well for me. So, and I think that plays into like my whole approach of the bargain buys. If people want to spend all their money on Zion, then I probably want to spend some money on Ingram or, something to that effect. Or like if someone wants to spend, money on, I don't know, I was going to say John Morant, but I think he's a superstar, man. Like I think watching him play is super fun. But yeah, I'm not really thinking about who's on the lower end of like the West. I could see someone like Portland, like Damian Lillard price is probably crazy cheap right now. And if they could make some noise and gel with a young team, and I like Billups as a coach, I think they could be in a play-in mix or something like that, and someone who's no one's thought of for the past almost 2 years since the bubble, really. Yeah. So I mean, I'm all about that value buy. So
okay, that's interesting. I might have to rethink my basketball card collecting strategy, because on our pod we operate under the hypothesis that if you don't make it within the first 3 years, there's just a dearth of interest in those players. They're like, oh, they're kind of not washed up, but we're all ready to move on to the next shiny thing. So the value correspondingly decreases. So me hearing you trying to find those bargain buys, I guess you had to practice patience, right?
Yeah. Well, do you know what? But do you know what's interesting is that I think that approach would have worked 5 years ago, 3 years ago, even. I just think that the players today are so raw that I don't think you're going to see that player come in and average 20 points out of the gate or average 20 points in their second year quite the same way. And I think that's why you have to go to the player with a couple of years experience. Like another player that I absolutely love, who probably nobody thinks of, but he's right in that middle range of a third year, fourth year player, but had injury problems is DeAndre Hunter. I think he's a super skilled player that nobody even thinks of or really cares for. But if the Hawks are improved and are going to make some noise, he plays every position and they're going to utilize him in a lot of funky lineups. And, he could play 35 minutes a game and really put up a lot of good numbers. So I think that approach of what have you done for me lately? And can you be right in there in the mix, right from the jump, like the Jaws and the Lukas and everyone else? I just think that just never really happens. And I think it's going to happen nowadays, especially with players coming in at 18 or players coming in really not really into the college experience or really trying to develop and more just fast track things and then try to develop. It just kind of works backwards. And I think it stunts a lot of people, a lot of players' growth. There's so many consensus high school number ones who went one and out. Right. One and done, and just never. I'm trying to think. Chuma Okiki, someone like that, had all the potential, had all the potential in the world, had all the skills in the world, and then just kind of went into purgatory. And I think it happens to far too many young players that just never really get that break, never get that structure, never get that mentorship, never get on the right path and just kind of flame out of the league. And I think it's kind of unfortunate, but I think that's what happens when players are just raw and you're drafting on potential and you're filling roles on potential. So I think that you need to exercise patience with players today, because I just think that they're so far off right now that you're not gonna the players that are going to be great. You're not really I feel like you're not really going to see it for another year or two. And the ones who are great out of the gate, I feel like as soon as they get figured out, they may not be able to adapt the same way that, those once in a generation type players do. And I took a lot of heat for pumping the brakes on Scotty. And I think that same thing is that I think if people start game planning for Scotty does have a lot of holes in his game, shot selection, being engaged, being absent-minded, not playing a play all the way through, patting himself on the back, a lot of things that you expect out of a young player, and that's all fine and good. And he's got talent, he's got drive, and he's got IQ, and he's got all those things. That's fantastic, and I love Toronto as a structure. But there's so many players who show flashes in their first year and struggle severely in their second year. True. Because they're game planned for, and they have weaknesses in their game, and you get figured out in the best league in the world pretty quickly. And some players just never really adapt. I'm not saying Scotty won't adapt and won't be great. I'm just saying there's far more players that just got figured out really quick and just fizzled out than became those generation talents. So like that's why I'm always skeptical of like those blue chip prospects or those like can't fail. Like I would rather be conservative and spend less money and have better return if you want to think of it from like an investment perspective or even on a fantasy perspective. You're trying to win your fantasy league. Like I think it's those sleepers that are gonna get you is the difference maker between being in contention and like winning your leagues is finding those value bets.
Yeah, I think you're talking my language. I tend to be more conservative, but I think with the hype of the hobby, and especially since 2020, you just can't help but get like right into the flipping mode and trying to, make that quick profit. But it's a lot of the times it's just a gamble and it's a high risk, high reward kind of situation, right?
I think it's super interesting what you said about the flipping thing is because especially with the thing with prospecting is you can do everything right. You can do absolutely everything right, make the right call on the right card on the right player. Timing, timing, buzz, and intrigue and demand is so difficult in this hobby. Like you can guess right on every level, but if the timing doesn't work out or a fluke situation happens, you're not necessarily able to capitalize it on, on the same level that you could have.
Totally
so it's
agree.
Guessing right is only half the battle. So that's why I try to stay away from like that flipping game. Or if you really want to get super into it, you can start planning specifically for flipping and just saying like, who's that player who has like, I know a friend of mine, really guy who, the guy who said I talked to him more than I talked to his wife or he talks to his wife, but he was talking about Jordan Poole and he wanted to invest in the Jordan Poole stuff to open the season because the Warriors had injury and their strength of schedule was pathetic. Like their first 20 games, no one had a winning record and he was going to play and he's just going to eat them alive. And he threw all this money at Jordan Poole stuff and it made sense. And like he bought the wrong card or like he decided to sell at the wrong time or like for whatever reason, the demand fizzled out. So timing those like lightning in the bottle type of prospects or investments is actually I feel is more difficult than actually even anticipating the prospect.
Good point. Yeah, good point. I have a good baseball example for myself. I got I talk about this a lot on the podcast, but I got an Aaron Judge Bowman Chrome rookie auto. And I got it when he hit 29 home runs or so. And of course, we all know he went on to hit 62. And I actually shipped it to Golden. And it's going on auction end of the month, October 25th. So talk about timing. The Yankees are so close to being eliminated. I'm just cheering hard for the Yanks right now.
Yeah,
just to hold on,
Yeah, it's the difference is massive, right? Yeah. Like the difference that a month can make, or like Absolutely. A game can, or even a game or a series can make, or a season with a championship can make, is really like make or break. So it's like I would, and this goes back, and I think I said this already, but this underlines kind of like my whole approach of like, I have to be conservative and I have to get the value buys because then it doesn't matter how I time it or what I do. I know it's going to be a pretty safe buy. And same thing, what I do is that like you talked about the timing of things. Like for me, I follow the same rhythm every single season and it's kind of like clockwork. And what I find is right now, the season's starting. There's a lot of anticipation for a lot of players. And I think I'm going to talk about previous years because I think this year is very specific because like we don't really know what the season's going to bring. I think there's like a lot of uncertainty in not just the hobby market, but financial markets right now. So I don't know if it really translates the same way that it would have a year, 2 years, 5 years ago or whatever it may be. But what I found was a lot of people would really get in invest mode right now and really try to do exactly what you're saying. I'm going to throw my money on Ant-Man or whoever it may be, or whatever player right now, and they roll the dice on them. And then that team ends up 500 to open the, the season. And people already get discouraged and then just start saying like, I tap out, I'm out, out. And that's why when the money flows in super fast and flows out super fast, that's when you get into those volatile markets. And I feel like everything modern right now ends up being super volatile. And then I think that like Christmas comes and people get more conservative and stuff like that. So I feel like cards tend to tank October to December.
Okay.
And then as those tank and then like activity kind of dwindles for Christmas, I think people get even more anxious, and then they start funneling the money out of those prospects or those, you know, breakout stars, and they start going into more established commodities, and they start going into more all-star players or Hall of Fame, or vintage does really well. I don't know if it's a correlation between Christmas and gifts, but vintage always seems to do one of the few things that does very well.
Oh, interesting.
During those times. And then I think in the new year, people start getting gung-ho about around the all-star break and stuff like that. People start getting gung-ho for the playoffs and then start going towards the superstars. So like off season is more prospects. Money comes out of prospects during like the first quarter of the season. Then it's more like old school vintage. Then it's like more like superstars like in the new year and then towards the all-star break. And one thing you have to also realize is that like I feel like the most interest is generated in the hobby based on how many nationally televised games you have and when playoffs start. Because like you and me might love basketball, but like that casual football fan who tunes into TNT on Thursdays and collects football cards and gets like a bit of fatigue for football, but is into cards, might watch a nationally televised game of someone on TNT and see a superstar performance and say, hey, yeah, I would like to own a card of that player. And the next time they're at a show or next time they're at somewhere, say, yeah, I saw him play. I think he's cool. Like, or John Morant leaves me on the edge of my seat. I want to go buy a John Morant card right now. Like that's what tends to happen. So like, I always like to look at like who's on national TV and like who's going to have a profile. And like I talked about DeJounte Murray playing towards like the playing game and stuff like that. And like suddenly these teams who aren't on market television suddenly get featured because they're in relevant games, or the Pelicans will start getting featured because of Zion, and someone might casually see Ingram and be introduced to him for the first time. Like, I think those are the dynamics that you have to play with if you want to know who you're going to chase or who might be a value buy and stuff like that. So like, I think that during the time of the year, like, and if you want to talk about the flip game, like, I would rather sell right now my auctions, which are more prospects than everything else, which is right now. I want to go to Chantilly and buy some vintage. And that seems to be what's going to be better, because I want to buy them now before, you know, maybe they get a bit more expensive down the line. I want to get rid of my more modern stuff because in case the teams don't perform well, then they might deflate a bit. So I think of in my assets, I try to be proactive in where I think that stuff is going and where I want to move my money and where I want to funnel my money to. So I try to be strategic about that as well, and like make sure that I'm always kind of in the black rather than in the red. And if you kind of anticipate stuff like that, and I think that's what you have to be in terms of like engaged in and be conscious of as a flipper rather than the prospect itself. I think you have to be more engaged and fine-tuned and disciplined in your approach. Yeah.
No, that's really good advice. Really insightful. Like the whole timing discussion too, that I really didn't think about that, but I'm glad you brought it up. So I want to also ask you, when you're talking about like your strategy, my other question was like any guys you're kind of off of, but I know you don't have that quick flipping mentality. So I don't know if that's a question that you can answer.
Well, I think I answered it in saying by saying what I wouldn't do, right? Like, so it's like
right.
Who who I would be off of. It would be like the people that like want to anoint teams just based on an off-season move. Like I'm really skeptical for the Timberwolves. I don't really know how that really works or how Gobert fits, and it's just going to turn Cat into, you know, a 3-point shooter. I think it's going to clog the lane for drivers. I think they did a lot of like, I thought they did like a lot of cutting and moving off the ball. That's going to become stagnant. Like I think they had a lot of skilled players that played a more balanced game. I just think that they're going to be really confused, and it might just be a new team. I don't know, but like I think those, and once again, those teams that try to make something out of nothing, I just always get really, really nervous about. Right. So that's probably what I would say.
You talked me out of buying Ant-Man, so thanks for that, Nazim.
which is crazy, because I think like Ant-Man is like, I
love Anthony Edwards. I love his game.
I love him. I don't necessarily like that team. I don't necessarily like that market. I don't necessarily the idea of buying younger players, because I just think that they kind of usually struggle out of the gate. And for that same reason, like I have no problem with buying Ant-Man. I just think that you're going to find him for cheaper in year 3 and 4 than you would in year like 1 and 2.
Yeah.
And I think it goes back to my original point of like, if I was going to invest in someone, I'd wait a few years before, like see like the ebbs and flows, and then if you want to engage in them, and I use the Giannis example, is that his prices went up and down, up and down, up and down, and as he kind of progressed within his own career, when he broke through, he kind of established himself as a star.
Yeah,
great. But you had that whole 8-year period where there was ebbs and flows of when you could buy in or not buy in. I would rather buy in the Ant-Man later on in that process rather than just jumping in, because a lot of people play that game. They want to be the first, and honestly, being the first is probably actually the worst thing that you can do, because everyone wants to be the first and everyone wants to overpay and everyone wants to be ahead of the curve. But in doing that, they kind of end up overpaying, because nobody. Like I saw a sale on like a LaMelo Ball, like from his rookie year. There's like a 1-of-1 that sold as like a BGS 9.5, and it sold for like $10,000. And they cracked it open and they got a PSA 10, and they actually upgraded the grade, and they tried selling it a year later, and it only sold for like, I think like $2,000. So it went from 10,000 to 2,000 from year 1 to year 2. And I think that there's a lot of that, because a lot of people will want to say it's a 1-of-1. I want that card. I like him. I like his style. I like his following. He's everything that I need to invest in, and they throw all the money at the card, and they realize they could have had, if they just waited. And that guy who got outbid on that for 10,000 probably was the guy who bought it up at 2,000, and all it did was just being patient for one more year, and like not being the first, and not trying to be ahead of the curve, and not have that fear of missing out, and just trying to again be more conservative and observe and kind of see how you feel. And again, there's no one that I wouldn't buy. It's just I'm going to be very more deliberate about when I buy them, I think, or the price that I pay for them, or like really like recognizing where value is, and maybe not even just looking at comps, but like looking at another player and saying, well, if they end up only being this, what is this what they'll be? Or if they end up being as high as that, is that what they could be? But like, I really think there's a lot of that game of like, not necessarily saying, oh, well, someone paid $500 for this once at one snapshot in time, therefore it's worth $500 the next day or the next month or anything else like that. I don't necessarily buy into that. I just try to be logical and sound in like how I value things, and like the relative value of like, oh, like something sold for this. Like, I can't remember what I bought. I think I sold like an OG Anunoby Silhouette Prime, and it was like a nice RPA and like great card and everything, but like I think I ended up buying it. I think they ended up selling for like 500 American.
Okay.
And great card, cool. I think I bought them and I sold them for more and less, but that's okay. And then I saw Pascal Siakam, and I think Pascal Siakam is a better player than OG Anunoby. It's the same card, same set. The Pascal Siakam was $200. Okay. And I'm thinking to myself, well, if an OG Anunoby is 500. I don't care what the comp is. Or I don't care what it was. Like and my brain, my basic brain, I can think an all NBA player at $200 is a good deal. If mediocre player or middle of the road player is 500, and that's just how I kind of operate. It doesn't matter who it is. If I just think to myself and say like that doesn't make sense to me, or that's an opportunity, then I'll probably take it.
Another good piece of advice for sure. Yeah, I like that. Thanks for your insight. It's been really fun and interesting just talking to you about the different strategies you employ for card collecting, and I love listening to collectors that have been in the game for a while. To round off the interview, we usually like to ask like lightning round questions, but so I have about 5 or 6 if you don't mind.
I don't mind.
Yeah, okay. And you could take your time with the answers, but these are just quick questions, all right? First one, I know if John was here, you always ask this for every guest that we have on. Is there a card that you just in your PC that you love, that you know? I know everything has a price, but like for you, it means something to you.
I would say my favorite. I'm sure I have other ones, but like the one that I'm thinking of is probably my Bill Russell rookie. Nice. Because I started off like when I was kind of establishing what my PC was. I decided that I wanted a rookie card from the top 50 players, and I know that my Bill Russell took me the longest to acquire, and it took me the longest to find. And during the pandemic, I did sell mine, unfortunately. But then I ended up reacquiring another copy, and that was the one card when I sold. I kind of regretted, and I just ended up buying it back. And I think when I found my replacement one, I think I told myself that I'm just never going to sell it, because I think that's just one of those cards that is iconic, and they're just not easy to find. So I think like it would be one of like my vintage ones for sure, I would say.
Okay, good choice. I always have to ask anyone that's into basketball this question: LeBron or MJ?
MJ. just MJ. It's in maybe I'm dating myself or showing my age, but I think the number one argument, and I think it was Chauncey Billups who said it, is that while LeBron was eating, everyone else ate, right?
Okay, right.
Like while LeBron was competing, Curry was running dynasties. Duncan was running dynasties. LeBron was not LeBron. Who else am I thinking? The Mavericks won. The Celtics won.
Right.
Like the Pistons won, and that's more of what it is. It's not necessarily like, oh, he lost and he lost and he lost. It's just this idea that there's like MJ and the Bulls, and no one else has a shot, and it's I think that mystique that makes me nostalgic about my childhood. Like no one makes me feel like that.
Yeah.
And no knock on LeBron's greatness. Like certainly not LeBron. There's no time I've ever sat to myself and just thought, and as great as LeBron is, and as iconic as he is, like I just never got that feeling from LeBron like I did Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
And the only other person that made me feel like Michael Jordan was Kobe. And I'm one of those few people that would probably have Kobe ahead of LeBron.
Okay.
On my all-time list.
All-time.
I can't for me, like conceptually, it doesn't even make sense to even put LeBron above Kobe. And again, that just might be showing my bias, but this is generally how I feel. Like I just know I wouldn't pick a team against MJ the same way I wouldn't pick a team against Kobe, but I would have no problem picking a team against LeBron, if that makes any sense at all.
Yeah, it does to me. Okay. I wonder if it's I don't want to make this into a big LeBron versus MJ discussion, because I know it could go on and on for some basketball diehards, but sometimes I wonder if it's a generational thing too, right? Like if no one's really seen MJ play or like have grown in that era.
If no one, like, I still think you got it. I still think you got it with Kobe, but you have to understand something, that like as a basketball fan or as a fan of the other team, when you saw MJ, you were nervous. You got sick to your stomach at the idea of you need to face him or you need to beat him.
Yeah.
And like I said, the only other person that made me feel that way was Kobe.
Yeah.
And that's just really what it comes down to. And I think looking back on it, or looking at stats, or looking at records, really the way people get emotional about basketball is because of those pit in your stomach feelings that you remember. I remember MJ's last shot at the Bulls. I remember like betting on the Jazz at home and like having that sick pit in my stomach when he stole the ball from Karl Malone and came down the like I remember that feeling in my stomach, and that is why. And you forfeited the game. Like you forfeited the game before the result even happened. You just watch it happen, and it's just casual because like it's a foregone conclusion. Like that's like Matrix shit. Like you can't.
Yeah.
Like you can't understand like how that stuff happens. And like I mentioned my time at the Raptors and stuff like that, and I got to see and I've heard other people describe meeting MJ like that. It's like there's an aura around him,
larger than life.
Like you can't penetrate that aura, and it literally, like, you don't see him walking, you see him gliding like in front of you. Like that's the type of thing that I'm finding when I'm sitting here talking about my GOAT. Like just nobody made me feel that way, and nobody, I don't think nobody ever will.
Okay. I hope some of our younger listeners appreciate that. I'm in my 40s as well, so I'm with you 100%. But I appreciate that explanation of MJ being number one. All right, we probably get criticized for this on our podcast for talking about this player way too much because we just can't shake him. Trae Young, is he going to be a legit, player to collect in the hobby?
This goes back to my original point at, like, at what price point. I will say this. I think that having a backcourt mate in DeJounte Murray, who's super long and can defend any position and can switch off, I think you can hide a lot of Trey's defensive liabilities. I think he's going to get more. I think by taking him even off the ball and putting the ball into DeJounte's hands, I think is going to make him take less bad shots. And I think it's only going to give him the opportunity to take shots that are more in his wheelhouse, because I don't follow Trae Young enough to really know what his shooting percentage is or like where he struggles. But like if I was to make a knock on him, I'd probably say it's efficiency, size, turnovers, stuff like that, and that usually comes out of having the ball in your hand too much and being the initiator and making things go. I think by having DeJounte there, he can get around people with his length. I think that he can cover up a lot of his liabilities on defense. And I think Trae Young, even though he may not average as many points, I think he's going to have a more efficient season. I think he's going to get more assists. I think he's going to get more threes. I think he's just going to have a good overall season, seeing how some of the pieces around him are better now. And I think, like I said, I really like the Hawks. I really like the Hawks' mix a lot, a lot. So I'm really, really curious to see how that goes. But like, I think that they forced him into roles that he probably wasn't comfortable in. I think he got exposed a bit. I think that with the team improving, I think you're going to see more of what he's good at and less what he's weak at. And I think that's probably to his benefit. So yeah, again, a really long answer to just the short answer to say, I think he can be a star.
Oh, nice. That's what I want to hear. Any basketball player that you think should get more hobby love, but currently doesn't for whatever reason? And I liked how you said, you mentioned Dame Lillard before, James Harden. It's funny you said James Harden in passing, because I was talking to my co-host off air. I'm like, am I crazy to really want to invest in James Harden right now? Like, it seems like people are just off of him and don't expect him to perform as well as he has, in the past. But yeah, anyone else or even those two?
Well, I even mentioned DeAndre Hunter, which I never really understood. And I think I know why. It's because of the injuries that he's had and he's spent a lot of time away. But the player that I've seen, just like, he can do anything that you ask him to do. And he's very much a team. Like, he's a guy that if you force fed him 20 shots and you made him be a playmaker, or he could be like a Paul George type of guy potentially. But like, I think the fact that he just really does what your team needs to win. And maybe some days that might be 20, and maybe another day that might be 10 rebounds and 2 steals. Like, and I'm okay with that. Like, he's not going to blow your mind in terms of like, I don't think he'd ever be really an all-star, but like, he's someone who I just appreciate and I want on my team. And I've enjoyed gathering his stuff for really, really, really cheap, because like, there's stuff that I enjoy owning. Yeah. And another one that I would feel like is too cheap right now. Personally, I think Siakam. Okay. I think for an all NBA, and I think nationally televised games has something to do with that, like I had said before. Yeah. But I think being an all NBA player and selling for what he sells for right now is kind of criminal. Like, I had I had some Siakam stuff in auction that closed tonight, and I was actually really surprised at how low it sold. But I think that's actually another thing that, like, I think that he deserves so much more credit for what he's done. I think he got a lot of heat in Toronto after signing a max contract and all the things that he wasn't. Right. I think the fact that he's got, more All-Stars, more All-NBAs and a lot of other players is pretty telling. I think he's gotten a lot better every season. Even the down season that he had a couple of years ago, where he got a lot of criticism after the contract, he improved his assists. He turned down his turnovers. He was more assertive with the like. There's a lot of things that, like, just ignore the box score and just watch the game and just say, like, right, is he getting better or is he getting worse? And even if the stats are getting worse, but I like what he's doing, then I'm not going to hate on him too much. And the fact that he had a comeback year last year, I loved, and I'm super excited for what he's going to do this year. He's talking like he wants to be a top 5 player. I think that's crazy. But like a top 10 player, I don't think it's outside of the realm of possibility when you look at what he's able to produce statistically, while not necessarily having great games, and not necessarily great teammates. And I'm thinking, like, from a perspective of assists, like, he averages a lot of assists for teammates who can't shoot the 3.
Yeah.
And he can create and give them really good open shots that they don't hit. Like I
Yeah.
I think with better players, and I'm not trying to rag on anyone on the Raptors, but I think with better shooters, I think he would like he could come close to average a good triple double. I really believe that.
Okay, nice. I like those choices. Okay, as a fellow Canadian, these last two questions are for you. Do you think, as a Canadian card collector, there will ever be a time where other Canadian card collectors will be collecting a sport other than hockey predominantly?
Predominantly, no.
Okay.
I just think that you have way too much history there,
History,
right? Like,
right?
and it in the Canadian hockey market is the lifeblood of the hockey market. I
Mm.
don't know the hockey market south of the border, but I don't know it to really exist all that strongly.
Yeah.
I assume hockey's pretty big in like some parts of Europe, but I don't know it to be very strong there either. So
Right.
I think that because it is the lifeblood of the sport and that hobby, I don't think that there'd be anything that would ever surpass it. But I really like the fact that like there are other sports that kind of come in. Now maybe that's just buzz and a flash in the pan, but like UFC got hot and Pokemon got hot and F1 got hot and basketball got hot. But like I liked it when there was like many things and many options, and you go to shows and you can see a bit of everything. Like
diversity,
I kind of like that. But like I think it's maybe because I'm not as tuned into what you see locally here in Canada, because I just don't do a lot of business as much as I do other places. But like,
sure.
I just don't see that ever happening, because like when you go to the Toronto Expo and it's 99% hockey, I just don't ever see that switching below anything else.
Yeah. No, that's a very valid point. All right,
Gap is closing. Like it's not close, but I feel like Gap has been closing.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm a diehard baseball card collector first, and then basketball.
Awesome.
So yeah, it's. I would love to go to a show in the States one day. That's one of my goals for sure.
Well, I will say that, like, for example, the Chantilly show is super close. Like from Toronto, I want to say it's only about 8 hours.
Okay.
I could be wrong.
Yeah.
Nashville is often in
East
I want to say Ohio, New Jersey, like Philadelphia. Like these are all like
doable. Yeah.
If you want to get in a car, you can make it work. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, man, make it work. Like I've been itching. Like a friend of mine in California, he's actually one of the organizers of the Burbank show, and his name is Jay, and he's been trying to get me out to their shows. Like, and I would love to just go out on vacation, go to California, Southern California, and check out one of those shows. But like, I haven't gone that far out. I try to stay like in the area, the East Coast, like a little day trip. I could drive down, keep expenses down and stuff like that, and have a bit of fun. But like one day, like I'd love to go to Vegas show, Dallas show, California show. I think that would be a lot of fun. But like, I think just everything else is pretty cool too.
Yeah, nice. And lastly, I'm going to assume that you're a Toronto Raptor fan.
See, that's tough. Well, I'll support the Raptors. I'll support Raptor. Okay. Like I support Raptors. I support Canadians. I like seeing like the game grow in Canada. I like seeing the local team do well. But like, I never grew up with that like strong diehard Toronto fandom, because there were no Raptors when I grew up as a basketball fan, and I don't call myself a Warriors fan anymore, just because I think that just comes within the specific context of like no disrespect to any Warriors fans, but I don't know any Warriors fans who know who Run TMC are. So it's like I don't identify with this. I don't think I identify with this generation of Golden State, fandom. Although like I still wear my We Believe yellow T-shirt around, and I still get comments here and there. So
you have a team that you root for, or that's
no?
Okay.
I think I'm just a basketball fan. I think I just geek out on basketball. Like I said, I like seeing the Raptors do well. Like for the area, I like seeing Canadians do well. So I definitely support them.
Okay.
I have a really big RJ Barrett collection just based on that alone. But
Canadian.
I just like geeking out. Like maybe it's just because I'm an old head, but even like my PC is just like the vintage stuff and stuff like that. So there's not really something there that I can just like, oh, I have this card so I can get into it like when I watch a game or something. No, it's not really that. I'm just a fan of the game, and I like seeing players who are fun to watch. And I think it's funny that you like you mentioned Harden, just to kind of circle back to your point, is that like I think it goes back to the whole value buy. Like the stock is just super low on that, and I think Philadelphia is going to do well. I think they have something to prove. I think they've shed a lot of that dead weight, and I think they have like established players. They aren't young. I think they've got pieces. I think they got tools. I think they've been at it for a long time. And I think, as I said, those are the teams that are the most dangerous. So yeah, like I definitely like that value buy for sure. But yeah, like I'll watch anyone. I'll watch the OKC Thunder play the Sacramento Kings. Like
okay, you're definitely a diehard basketball fan then.
But I'll watch basketball. I will ref basketball. I'll coach basketball. I will do whatever I can for basketball. So like I
there you go. That's
just great. Something I love.
Okay, I was going to ask you, like, if you had to choose one Raptor to collect past or present, who would it be? But I'm going to change it because I know you're not a diehard. Like, I'm a bandwagon guy myself. When they won the championship, I'm like, oh, well, I need to buy Raptors gear.
Live in the moment.
Yeah, exactly, right? But let me change it. If you had to choose one Canadian player in the NBA, past or present, who would you collect? And you mentioned RJ Barrett, but is there anyone? I
wouldn't even hesitate, and I would say RJ Barrett. And the reason I say this is that similar to what impresses me about Pascal, I'm always impressed at how RJ identifies weaknesses and makes them his strength. Like I am always really, really, really shocked by that, and it's this specific, unique drive to be better that I just am always left impressed by. And I think that season over season, he's always improving. And I think people who don't watch him play tend to kind of buy into some of the stats that he puts forth. But I think the Knicks are pretty bad, and I think they put him in a really and I talked about that with Trey too. I think they put him in a lot of really bad situations that kind of influence how bad he shoots. I think it influences like how little he can impact the game. Like if you stand around on offense and you give it to RJ 30 feet away from the floor with 2 seconds left on the shot clock, guess what? It's probably not going to go in, or he's probably going to get a turnover, or it's probably not going to look very good. But I think that's like a team malfunction more so than the player malfunction, because I've watched him from before Duke, and I just see just the gradual progression, and I think the pedigree is there. I think his access to information. I mean, I think the fact that Steve Nash is his godfather is pretty cool. So when you talk about like resources and being groomed for this at a very young age, I'm always impressed year over year how much he improves. So even though I think the Knicks suck, and I don't think it's a really good situation for him, I think it's a good market if they can surprise some people. And I just always love seeing him play. But to my original point of like prospects, I was keen and I knew that I wanted to buy RJ stuff, but I didn't buy a single RJ in the first year. I didn't even buy the RJ in the second year. I waited until, he was only averaging 14 points to open the season last year. And then I just threw everything I had at him. And it's kind of like you were saying before, is like, do I buy this guy and like he's super cheap, and like or people are giving up on him, and it's kind of, as you said, it's when they're super cheap that they have the most value, and it's when you want to actually buy them up. So like I would probably just say RJ. I don't know what the future holds for him in the situation that he's in, but like I'm just always left impressed by him ahead of any other Canadian player, I would say.
Cool.
More than Shea.
Sorry?
More than Shea.
More than Shea Gilgeous. Okay.
Yeah. who I was always very high on, but also a bad situation to be in. And maybe the Knicks are just a little bit better. I don't know.
Okay. Nazim, it was a really fun interview. That hour and a bit really flew by. So, thanks for being on the show. Really appreciate your time and your insight into the hobby today.
I appreciate your time too, man. Thanks for doing what you do. Always a fun time, always good content, and wish you guys all the best.
Thanks so much. Hey, thanks for listening to Cards to the Moon. We'd really appreciate you subscribing to our podcast wherever you listen to your podcasts. And you can also connect with each of us on Instagram at 5cardguys, or you can follow Hyung at Integrity Sports Cards, or John at TradeU at Recess. You can also check us out at 5cardguys.com. Thanks again, and hope to connect soon.